I was the Omega no one wanted, the outcast, the weak link, the punishment. They dragged me into the Bloodfang Pack like I was carrion to be thrown at a starving wolf. My wrists were raw from the chains, my knees scraped and muddy from being forced to crawl before him, and there he stood, Damien Blackthorn, alpha of the most ruthless pack in the northern wilds. His silver eyes were cold, merciless, and when they landed on me, I felt smaller than dust. "You bring me scraps," he told the council that day. His voice was a blade, sharp enough to slice the air. "She'll rot in the dirt before she serves me." But fate is crueler than any alpha's wrath, because every cruel word he spat at me, every mocking smirk when he saw me on my knees, every command he barked to break me, it only made the bond inside me pull harder. He didn't know it then, neither did I, but the one man who swore he would destroy me was the only man the moon goddess ever intended for me. If you believe fate can be crueler than any alpha's wrath, hit subscribe, because this is the story of how his scorn turned into fire neither of us could escape. My name is Ilara Vane, 21 years old, daughter of a beta who gambled everything and lost. My father was proud, reckless. He thought he could defy the council, challenge their decrees, and come out unscathed. But when he failed, the punishment didn't fall on his shoulders. It fell on mine. The night they came for me, the moon was nothing but a sliver hidden behind storm clouds. My mother wept silently as the guards ripped me from my bed, her hands trembling too badly to hold me back. My father didn't even look at me. He kept his head bowed, ashamed, as though I was the one who had dishonored our family. "Take her," the council said. "Strip the veins of their pride. She will serve as Omega to Bloodfang, a reminder of what happens to traitors." Chains bit into my wrists as they dragged me through the forest. I stumbled over roots, my thin nightgown torn by brambles, my feet bleeding. By the time we crossed into Bloodfang territory, I was half delirious with exhaustion. And then I saw him. Damien Blackthorn, the alpha everyone whispered about, the one whose name was spoken in warning to pups who strayed too far from the den. Tall, broad-shouldered, his presence filled the clearing like a storm cloud. His silver eyes glowed under the torchlight, colder than steel, sharper than knives. The guards shoved me forward, and I landed hard in the mud at his boots. "She is yours," the council envoy said, "the daughter of a traitor. Useless. Let her scrub your floors until her fingers fall off, or leave her to rot in the kennels. She is nothing." I lifted my head, my hair clinging to my face with rain and blood. For a fleeting second, I thought I saw his eyes narrow with something. Recognition? Curiosity? But then he sneered, baring his teeth in a cruel half-smile. "You bring me scraps," he said, his voice like thunder. "I don't need another mouth to feed." The envoy chuckled darkly. "Then starve her. Break her. Make her your warning." Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then Damien's boot nudged me, hard enough to topple me back into the mud. "Fine," he said at last. His tone was dismissive, almost bored. "She'll scrub floors until her hands bleed. If she falters, she starves." A ripple of cruel laughter broke from the Bloodfang wolves gathered around. My cheeks burned as their eyes lingered on me like vultures circling carrion. That was the moment I realized my fate had been sealed. Not as a warrior, not as a daughter of a proud beta line, but as the lowest of the low, an Omega slave to the alpha who hated me on sight. Still, as the chains were yanked from my wrists and I was shoved toward the dark, looming fortress of Bloodfang Keep, I felt something stir inside me. Not defiance, not fear, something deeper. something dangerous. The faintest tug in my chest, a whisper from my wolf clawing beneath my skin. I didn't understand it then, but fate already did, because Damien Blackthorn, the alpha who mocked me, who vowed I would starve in the dirt, was not just my tormentor, he was my mate. The first thing you learn as an Omega in the Bloodfang Pack isn't obedience, it's invisibility. If they can't see you, they can't mock you. If they can't hear you, they can't remind you what a disgrace you are. I learned quickly. By dawn, I was scrubbing the stone floors of the great hall, the taste of ash still lingering in my mouth from the burnt porridge they fed me, scraps no better than slop for hogs. My hands bled where the rough brush had split my skin. The stench of wolf musk and iron filled my nose as warriors tramped past, laughing, their boots scattering mud over the very floors I'd just cleaned. "Careful, Omega," one sneered, kicking over the bucket so water sloshed across my knees. "You missed a spot." Laughter erupted, echoing off the vaulted ceilings. I bowed my head, biting my tongue until I tasted copper. Answer back, and I'd be lashed. Stay silent, and maybe, just maybe, they'd grow bored. But Damien, he never grew bored of me. Every time he entered the hall, his presence sucked the air from the room. He carried power like a second skin, his silver eyes cutting through shadows. And whenever his gaze found me on my knees, scrubbing like a beaten hound, his lip curled. "Even rats serve a purpose," he said one morning, striding past me without slowing. "But you're nothing more than a stain that won't wash out." His words hit harder than any blow. My wolf whimpered inside me, curling tight, but she didn't break. She couldn't, because no matter how sharp his cruelty, there was always that tug, that ache in my chest every time his voice wrapped around me like chains. I didn't understand it then, only that my body betrayed me. When he walked past, the fine hairs on my arms rose. When he spoke, my heart stuttered. When he sneered, something deep inside whispered, "Ours." The council's spell had buried the truth, caged the bond, but even cages rust, even chains snap. And every night, when I lay shivering in the cellar on my bed of straw, the bond clawed at me. Dreams came, thick with heat and hunger. Dreams where Damien's hands didn't shove me down, but pulled me close. Where his silver eyes softened. Where his scorn melted into fire. I woke from those dreams hating myself, hating him, hating fate. But hating something doesn't stop it from being real. The days blurred into endless servitude. I rose before dawn to carry water from the well, buckets bruising my shoulders until my skin turned raw. I tended the warriors' wounds after battles, though they spat at me for daring to touch them. I scoured the kitchens until smoke stung my eyes and burned my lungs. And when I faltered, when my knees buckled, or my hands slipped, or my strength failed, Damien was there, always watching, always ready. "You stumble like a pup," he said one night when I collapsed beneath the weight of a stack of firewood. He stood over me, arms crossed, his shadow stretching long and cruel across the snow. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to rise even as my legs shook. "I'll finish," I whispered. My voice cracked, but I made it stand. His eyes narrowed, something unreadable flickering in the depths of that silver. But then it was gone, replaced with scorn. "Finish faster," he said, and walked away. I wanted to scream, to hurl the firewood at his retreating back, but instead I bent, lifted, carried. Because what choice did I have? Nights were the worst. The cellar was damp, the stones cold enough to numb my bones. Rats skittered across the floor, their tiny claws scratching in the dark. My thin blanket did nothing against the winter chill, and always, always above me, I could hear the pack's laughter, the clink of tankards, the feast I was never invited to. Sometimes I pressed my palm to my chest, where the bond tugged like a cruel rope, and I whispered into the silence, "Why him? Why fate? Why would the moon goddess chain me to a man who hates me?" My wolf never answered. She only howled in my dreams, her voice echoing with longing I refused to name. But even cruelty has cracks. The first time I saw Damien falter, it was barely a slip. He returned from patrol one morning, his shirt torn, blood soaking the fabric. I froze when I saw it. The gash across his ribs, the kind that should have sent him to a healer. But instead of tending it, he stalked past me as though nothing had happened. Something inside me burned. Not pity, not fear, instinct. The bond pulled like a thread, dragging me after him, even as my mind screamed to stay away. And though he slammed the door to his chambers behind him, I pressed my hand to the wood, trembling, breath shallow, because I realized then, the alpha who mocked me, who called me useless, who made me crawl in dirt, was not invincible. He bled, and fate never intended for me to ignore the blood of my mate. That was the beginning of the first crack, and cracks, no matter how small, always spread. The storm came that night. Rain lashed against the stone walls of Bloodfang Keep, rattling shutters, drowning the howls of wolves outside. The cellar where I slept leaked from every crack, cold water dripping from the ceiling, soaking through my thin blanket until my skin went numb. I was huddled in the corner, teeth chattering, when the door slammed open. Damien. He staggered down the steps, one hand pressed against his ribs. His shirt was ripped wide, blood running hot and dark down his side. Even in the flicker of the torchlight, I could see the gash. Deep, angry, dangerous. I froze. I should have bowed. Should have kept my head low. Should have prayed he didn't notice me at all. But instinct, the bond, pulled me to my feet before my mind caught up. "Alpha, don't." His voice was a growl, rougher than usual, threaded with pain. "Don't touch me." He stumbled, bracing against the wall, breath hissing through clenched teeth. His knuckles were white where they pressed to his wound, but his legs trembled beneath him. My wolf surged. My hands shook, not from fear but from need. Need to help him, to keep him alive, to close the wound that threatened to steal his breath. "I can stitch it," I whispered. His silver eyes snapped to mine, sharp even through the haze of pain. "You forget your place." "I know my place," I said, voice breaking. "On the floor. In the dirt. But if you don't let me, you'll bleed out before dawn." The air crackled between us, charged, dangerous. His jaw flexed, the muscles ticking as if he warred with himself. Then, slowly, he let go of his ribs. His hand fell to his side, slick with blood. "Fine," he snarled. "Do it." I fetched the small kit I kept hidden, a needle, thread, a strip of linen scavenged from the kitchens. My hands trembled as I approached him, the scent of his blood thick in the air, metallic, sharp, but threaded with something warm that made my wolf whimper. Kneeling before him, I pressed the linen against his side. His body tensed, a low growl rumbling in his chest, but he didn't push me away. "Hold still," I murmured. His laugh was bitter. "Commanding me now, Omega?" I swallowed hard. "If you want this done right, yes." For a heartbeat, silence. Then a sound I never expected, a faint huff of amusement, like a ghost of a laugh. It vanished as quickly as it came. I threaded the needle, breath shallow, and began to stitch. My fingers brushed his skin, hot, fevered, and sparks shot up my arm. My wolf howled inside me, clawing against the council's suppression like it could break through sheer will alone. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. "Look at you," Damien muttered, voice low, almost to himself, hands shaking, eyes wide. "You're terrified." "No," I whispered. His head tilted, silver eyes narrowing. "No, I'm not terrified of you," I said, forcing the words out through trembling lips. "I'm terrified of what this is." The needle paused mid-stitch. My breath caught. His gaze locked onto mine, and for the first time I saw something there that wasn't cruelty, recognition, fear, desire. The bond roared inside me, rattling its cage, begging to be unleashed. Damien's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. His touch burned, seared through me, igniting every nerve. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it might break through. For a moment, neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed. Then his jaw clenched, and he shoved me back, the force knocking me onto the cold stone floor. "Forget it," he barked, though his voice shook. "Forget whatever this is." He yanked his torn shirt back into place, ignoring the half-finished stitches. His eyes lingered too long. I pressed my palm against my chest, desperate to quiet the fire spreading through me. "You'll tear the wound open again," I whispered. "Then let it tear," he growled. He turned, storming up the steps, leaving bloody footprints behind. The door slammed. Silence swallowed me whole, but the bond still burned, relentless, unyielding. And for the first time, I knew Damien wasn't as untouchable as he wanted the world to believe, and I wasn't as invisible as he wanted me to be. That night, as thunder shook the keep and rain pounded against the earth, I curled into the damp straw, trembling not from cold, but from something far more dangerous. Because the alpha who scorned me had felt it too. Hate is a clean word. You can hold it like a blade and know exactly which way the edge faces. But whatever this was between us, this heat that licked at bone whenever he stood too close, it wasn't clean. It crawled beneath my skin. It stole sleep from my nights and strength from my mornings. And Damien seemed determined to grind it to ash. He started with spectacle. "On your knees, Omega," he barked across the training yard, where frost clung to the ground like a second skin. Warriors paused mid-spar, their steaming breaths turning to mist in the winter air. The clang of steel dulled. All eyes swung to me. I sank. Stone bit into my kneecaps. My palms flattened on gritty earth. "Do you know why wolves submit?" he asked, pacing a slow circle around me. His boots left hard prints. His scent, pine, iron, something dark, coiled under my tongue. "To live," I said. "To serve," he corrected, voice low, almost conversational. The kind of tone he used when he wanted his cruelty to carry. "To remember what they are." He stopped in front of me. Fingers slid into my hair, not gentle. He tilted my head back until my throat bared to the white blade morning. I felt the pack's gaze sharpen, heard some warrior snort a laugh. Rage flared hot, too hot, burning away the chill. "Watch me," Damien called to his pack without looking away. "Watch what becomes of a traitor's blood." His hand tightened. Not enough to bruise, but enough to mark. Enough to say mine. And nothing. I had to bite down on my own tongue to keep the sound inside, because the moment his skin met mine, the bond cracked like lightning through a dry sky. White-hot, blinding. My wolf arched. "Ours," she keened, reckless. The council's spell clanged like a chain in my chest. I made myself meet his eyes. "Satisfied, Alpha?" I said, steady somehow. "Everyone's seen." A flicker, like a match struck too close to oil, passed through that silver gaze. Then he dropped his hand and stepped back. A bland smile pulled across a mouth that could break bones or promises with the same ease. "Back to work," he said, and the yard erupted again in movement, steel, snarls, boots, breath. I rose slow. I did not let myself shake. He did not look back at me. He doubled my chores after that, but not in ways that would leave visible wounds. It was always a little farther to carry the water buckets. A little less food slid across the kitchen table. A little more ash in the hearth to scoop when everyone else had gone to bed. It would have been cleaner if he'd struck me. Bruises bloom and fade. But this was the kind of breaking that pretended to be nothing at all. Still, the cracks spread. The next time he passed me in the corridor, I smelled the ghost of healing herbs under the edge of pine and iron. My stitches had held. He didn't thank me. Of course he didn't. But his gaze skimmed my hands, took in the rawness of my knuckles, the red welts where rope had rubbed when I hauled wet linens out to freeze dry. Something like reluctance or restraint tightened his jaw. "Move," he said. I pressed myself to the wall, and he moved past, a storm packed into muscle and bone, barely caged. I told myself I hated him. I listed reasons in my head as I scrubbed, peeled, hauled, mended. Every slight, every sneer, every time he made my name sound like dirt. I repeated them like a prayer, the rosary beads of the scorned. It didn't stop the heat. At night, alone in the cellar, I lay on my side and pressed my forearm hard over the ache in my chest, like pressure could force the bond back into silence. The rats scratched, the stones sweated, and I stared at the sliver of moon through the grate and whispered, "I will not want him. I will not want him." Want isn't a choice. It's a tide. 3 nights after the training yard spectacle, the council came. I knew because the keep changed its breath. Doors shut. Fires tamped to a low, listening burn. Even the warriors' laughter dulled into wary hums. The council always smelled like polished wood and old coins. It slipped down the halls, quiet and heavy. They arrived at dusk. Cloaks the color of old wine. Rings that flashed. Eyes that didn't look at me as I knelt at the edge of the great hall with a broom and a bucket like a penitent. I kept my head down and my ears open. "Border tithes will stand," someone said, a cold, papery voice. "The girl?" another asked, as if I were a stain on the table. Damien's voice cut across theirs. "The Omega belongs to my pack. My decisions are not your sport." "Careful," the papery one murmured, and I heard the scrape of a seal across parchment. "The Moonstone ceremony approaches. Bonds have consequences." The broom stilled in my hands. Bonds. The word shivered over my skin like cold water. "Not every bond is a blessing," Damien said. If steel could speak, it would sound like that. They talked of numbers and borders after that, of wolves I had never met, of enemies at the far river. I swept ashes no one had spilled and memorized the cadence of a threat everyone pretended wasn't one. When the council left, I was sent to the kitchens. There's a kind of cruelty that wears a polite face. "Alara, scrub the pot you've already scrubbed. Alara, the hearth has new soot somehow. Alara, be grateful for crumbs." I took the orders. I wiped and lifted and stacked until my arms hummed with useless pain. Then the door at my back thumped lightly. I glanced over my shoulder. Damien stood there, a shadow cut out of shadow. The torch behind him turned the edges of his hair to silver flame. "Leave us," he told the kitchen hands. They scattered like spilled grain. The room felt too small. "Do you listen at doors now?" he asked, but there was no heat in it. More like he was testing the shape of the question in his mouth. "I was sweeping," I said. No one told me to go deaf." He moved closer. The scar at his ribs, my stitches, disappeared under his shirt, but I could feel it, tugging, a phantom ache where my fingers had been. He reached past me, took a clean tankard from the shelf, and set it on the table. The movement had the ease of a man who'd done it 1,000 times. The tension in his shoulders did not. "You will keep your head low when the council walks our halls," he said. "I did," I answered. "Lower." I wanted to bite something. "Yes, Alpha." He turned as if to leave, then paused. "Your hands," he said without looking. "Show me." I stared at his back. "Why?" "Because I told you to." Hate is clean. I let it steady me. I held out my palms, raw and split, lines of red like fresh map work. He took them, and the world narrowed to the moment his skin touched mine. Heat. A flare up my veins. My breath misfired. His thumb skimmed a blister, careful in a way that didn't match the rest of him at all. "You should wear cloth under the rope," he said. "It bites less. You'd prefer I work slower?" A muscle jumped in his cheek. "I'd prefer my omega not bleed all over my floors." "I'll try to die tidier," I said, and it slipped out before I could stop it. A reckless little blade. Silence. Then, against all sense, the smallest drag of a smile at the corner of his mouth, there and gone, like a comet you spend your life wondering if you really saw. "Don't test me," he said soft. "Stop making me a test," I wanted to say. I didn't. He let my hands go. The room cooled by degrees. He stepped back, armor sliding into place, voice sharpening. "Tomorrow," he said, "you'll clean the council chamber. The shelves, the ledgers, the dais. Be thorough." "Yes, Alpha." He left without looking back, and the quiet he carried with him stayed behind and settled in my chest. The next morning, I climbed the narrow stairs to the council chamber with my bucket, my rags, my raw hands. The room was all dark wood and older secrets. Heavy chairs, a long table scarred by knives and rings. The air tasted of old paper and something faintly sweet, like dried sap. I started with the table legs. Work is a prayer if you make it one. Circle, press, breathe. Circle, press, breathe. I scrubbed the etchings in the wood. Wolves, moons, a line of crude claw marks that looked fresh because someone wanted them to. Shelves groaned under ledgers and scrolls. I dusted spines stamped with titles I couldn't read from my angle and titles I could. Tithe records, border claims, oath binds of the northern packs. Oath binds. I should have kept moving. Instead, I slid the ledger forward, just enough to catch the edge of a scarred desk in the cloth. My fingers brushed the cover. Dust lifted like breath. "Don't," I whispered to myself, because fate loves a whispered don't. The ledger slipped. A folded letter, brittle with age and sealed in a deep, dried red, slid out from the shelf and kissed the floor at my feet. I stared at it. My name is not on letters. My name is on chore lists and curses. But I have learned this truth. Artifacts carry teeth. They bite the story open. My hands shook. I reached. From the doorway, a board creaked. "Alara." Damien's voice. Low. Uncertain. I snatched the letter up on reflex, heart thundering. He stepped into the room, and his gaze went to my closed fist the way a wolf's goes to fresh blood. "What is that?" he asked. I closed my fingers tighter. My pulse beat against the old wax like a trapped bird. I met his eyes and felt the bond pull like a chain being yanked. "Something you didn't want me to find," I said. "Hate is clean." What roared between us wasn't. It was crimson and white and silver, oaths and knives and a moon that sees everything. Whatever lived in that letter, whoever had sealed it in blood, waited like a held breath between us. "Give it to me," he ordered. I lifted my chin. Make me." For a breath, we were still. Then the world moved. If your mate humiliated you in public, but you felt the bond crackle under your skin, would you forgive or burn the whole pack down? Tell me in the comments. The letter burned in my hand, not from heat, but from weight, the kind of weight that shifts the ground under your feet. The seal was dried crimson wax, brittle and cracked with age. But as I traced it with my thumb, I realized the truth. It wasn't just wax. It was blood. Damien's blood. The symbol etched into it, a crescent moon split in two, was older than any pack oath. My wolf shivered inside me, her hackles rising. Damien stepped closer, silver eyes sharp as knives. His voice was steel. "Give it to me, Alara." I should have obeyed. That's what Omegas do. Obey. Submit, survive. But I was past survival. I was hungry. For answers, for truth, for the reason fate had chained me to a man who hated me. So I did the unthinkable. I broke the seal. The wax cracked like bones snapping under weight. The parchment unfurled in my shaking hands. Words slashed across the page in dark, rusty ink too thick, too metallic to be anything but blood. 2 names scrawled side by side: Damien Blackthorn, Alara Vane. Below them, a sigil I had only seen once before, on the council's banners, the oath bind of the northern packs. My chest squeezed, breath stalling in my throat. This wasn't punishment. This wasn't exile. This was a contract. The council had written both our names in blood, sealing a bond neither of us had agreed to. I stumbled back, my vision swimming. "You knew." Damien's jaw tightened, his expression unreadable stone. "Give me the letter." "You knew!" My voice cracked, ragged with fury. "You've mocked me, humiliated me, starved me, but you knew this whole time. You knew the bond was real." His silver eyes flared with something raw. Anger, shame, desire. I couldn't tell. "This bond is a curse," he said, his tone rough, breaking. "You think I wanted this? To be tied to the daughter of a traitor? To the Omega no one wanted?" The words sliced through me, sharper than any claw. My wolf whimpered, wounded, but didn't back down. "No," I whispered, clutching the letter to my chest. "You didn't want me. But fate did. The council did. And now?" I held up the parchment, trembling. "We both pay the price." He moved fast. In a blink, Damien's hand closed around mine, his grip iron. The parchment crumpled between our palms, blood-stained words crushed under skin and heat. The bond roared. It surged through me like wildfire, tearing at the council's suppression spell, clawing to be free. Sparks danced under my skin where his fingers pressed mine. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. His breath caught. For the first time, Damien faltered. "Alara." My name on his lips was a sin, a prayer, a weapon. For a heartbeat, the world was just us. The Alpha who swore to destroy me, the Omega who should have been invisible. Bound by blood neither of us chose. Then he ripped his hand away like he'd touched flame. "Forget it," he growled. His voice was hoarse, cracked. "Forget what you saw." I stared at him, fury flooding my veins. "You can't keep burying this, Damien. The bond doesn't care about your pride." His eyes burned with silver fire. "I'd rather burn myself alive than let it take me." He stormed toward the door, his broad shoulders rigid, fists clenched. At the threshold, he paused, his voice low, ragged. "You think fate is a gift, Alara, but it's a noose, and one day it'll hang us both." The door slammed shut, rattling the shelves. Dust rained down like ash. I sank to the floor, the letter crushed in my hands. My pulse thundered, the bond still crackling like a storm under my skin. They had tied us together with blood. Not love, not choice, not mercy. The council hadn't punished me by sending me here. They had punished him. And yet, why did it feel like my punishment too? That night in the cellar, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the torn parchment under the flickering glow of a single candle, the blood-stained names carved into my vision. Damien Blackthorn, Alara Vane. Our fates had been sealed long before I ever set foot in his pack, and no amount of scorn could erase what had been written in blood. The letter weighed on me like an anchor. I carried it with me everywhere, in my apron pocket, folded tight, the dried blood pressing like a bruise against my hip. Every time I touched it, the bond stirred, and every time Damien looked at me, I saw the truth flicker in his eyes, even if he refused to name it. I lasted 2 days before I broke. 2 days of chores doubled, of whispers hissing through the pack house, of Damien avoiding me with the precision of a blade slicing clean through rope. But bonds don't loosen when ignored. They pull tighter. They demand. So on the 3rd night, I found him. The hall was nearly empty, the fire burning low. Damien stood alone at the far end, arms braced on the long table, his head bowed as if the weight of the keep itself pressed on his shoulders. The torchlight painted his silver eyes in molten steel when he finally looked up. Alara. My name was not a question. It was a warning. I strode forward anyway, my fists clenched, the letter crushed inside one of them. My heart hammered, but fury steadied me. You knew, I spat. He straightened slowly, like a predator uncoiling. Go back to your cellar. I slammed the letter onto the table between us. You knew. The parchment unfurled, the blood-stained names catching the firelight. His gaze flicked to it, then back to me, hard and cold. I told you to forget what you saw, he said. His voice was quiet, but sharp enough to cut. And I told you I won't, I shot back. This isn't just my curse, Damien. It's yours too. The council bound us, by blood, by fate. His jaw tightened, silver eyes burning like moonfire. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then he seized the letter, crumpling it in his fist. This bond, he growled, is a chain. Do you understand? A chain they forged to control me, to control us. You think it's destiny? It's prison. The words tore through me, but anger rose to meet them. Prison? You call me prison? I never asked for this. I never begged fate to tie me to an alpha who would sooner spit on me than look at me. But here we are. The fire popped, sparks crackling between us like echoes of the bond. His chest rose and fell, sharp with barely leashed fury. You don't understand, Alara. If I claim you, if I let this bond free, the council wins. They'll own me. Own us. They already do, I said, my voice breaking. They wrote our names in blood. You think starving me, humiliating me, breaking me changes that? It doesn't. You're already chained, to me, to this, and no amount of hate will burn it away. His hand slammed the table, the wood groaning under his strength. I won't be weak. The words sliced me open, but I stepped closer, daring the fire. Then stop acting like it makes you weaker. You bleed, Damien. You break. And when you do, it's not the council who stitches you back together. It's me. His breath hitched, just enough for me to hear. His gaze locked on mine, raw and unguarded for a single dangerous heartbeat. The bond surged. It clawed against the suppression spell, tearing at the edges. Sparks raced across my skin, up my arms, to my throat. His silver eyes widened. He felt it too. Alara. My name on his lips was a shiver, a promise, a curse. I could feel the bond trying to snap free, its power coiling hot and wild between us. My wolf howled inside me, desperate, ready to break chains that had caged her since the day I entered this pack. But Damien ripped his gaze away, clenching his fists until his knuckles went white. He turned, shoulders rigid, his voice breaking like glass. "I can't," he said. I shook, trembling from the force of what had almost broken loose. "You mean you won't?" He didn't answer. Instead, he strode past me, leaving the blood-marked letter in tatters on the table. The fire roared in the silence he left behind, and in its light, I realized the truth. He was terrified, not of me, not of the bond, but of what would happen if he stopped fighting it. That night, I sat in the cellar with the torn letter spread before me. The names were blurred now, smeared with sweat and blood, but no amount of tearing could erase them. Damien Blackthorn, Alara Vane. The council hadn't given us a choice. Fate hadn't asked permission, and whether Damien admitted it or not, the bond was breaking through. Soon, neither of us would be able to stop it. The blood moon rose red as spilled wine, staining the night sky. Its glow bathed the clearing in crimson light, turning every wolf's fur into glimmering shades of fire and shadow. Drums pounded in the distance, steady as a heartbeat. The air vibrated with the weight of ritual, with the eyes of the moon goddess pressing down on us all. I had been dragged from the cellar before dawn, scrubbed raw until my skin burned, my hair yanked into tight braids. No one explained. No one needed to. My stomach knew before my mind caught up. Tonight was no feast, no festival. Tonight was a spectacle, the ceremony. The council waited on the dais, cloaked in black and silver, their rings glinting in the moonlight. Their faces were hidden beneath carved wolf masks, but I could feel their eyes on me like claws raking flesh. And Damien stood before them, Alpha Damien Blackthorn, my tormentor, my mate. His silver eyes caught the moonlight, burning brighter than the torches lining the clearing. He looked carved from stone, hard, cold, immovable. But his jaw ticked, and I recognized the storm beneath the armor. 2 guards shoved me forward until I stumbled into the dirt at his feet. "On your knees," the councilman with the papery voice intoned. "Let the Alpha show his pack what becomes of traitors' blood." The pack howled, a chorus of savage approval. I knelt. My knees sank into the cold earth. My palms trembled against the dirt, but I kept my chin lifted. If they wanted me broken, they would have to carve the pieces themselves. Damien stepped closer. His shadow swallowed mine. He loomed over me, every inch the Alpha. My wolf whimpered, torn between instinct to bow and the bond that screamed to rise. "Break her," the council ordered. "Prove she is nothing." The air stilled. Even the drums paused, as if the night itself waited for Damien's choice. He reached down, his hand fisted in my hair, yanking my head back until my throat bared to the blood-red sky. Gasps rippled through the crowd, anticipation thick as fog. Our eyes met. The bond surged, a live wire snapping inside my chest. His silver gaze burned, flickered, hatred, hunger, something I couldn't name. I braced for the strike, for the humiliation, for the final breaking. Instead, his claws slashed, not across me, but into the ground beside my head. The earth split, dirt flying. The crowd gasped again, this time sharp with shock. "She is mine," Damien growled. His voice rolled through the clearing, thunder under blood moonlight. The pack froze. Even the council shifted, uneasy. "She is mine," he repeated, silver eyes blazing as they locked onto me. "Not your pawn. Not your punishment. Mine." The bond tore free of its cage. I felt it, raw, scorching, undeniable. The council's suppression spell shattered like glass, shards slicing through my veins as power roared awake inside me. My wolf howled, free for the first time in years, her voice shaking the trees. The ground trembled beneath us. Wolves shifted instinctively, fur bristling, their howls mingling with hers. The council's leader stood, his mask gleaming in the crimson light. "Careful, Alpha. Claiming her defies our decree. You know the price of disobedience." Damien turned toward them, his shoulders broad, his voice a weapon. "Then let the price come. But know this, Ilara is mine, by blood, by bond, by the moon goddess herself." His words hit me harder than any blow ever had. My heart stuttered, my breath stolen. The pack erupted in chaos. Some shouted, others bowed, torn between loyalty and fear. Sparks of power danced in the air, drawn from the bond now alive between us. I rose from my knees, trembling but unbroken, and for the first time, Damien didn't shove me back down. He extended his hand, not gentle, but certain. My fingers slid into his. Heat seared through me, the bond snapping fully into place. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the glow of the blood moon flared brighter, bathing us both in crimson fire. The bond wasn't just felt, it was seen. A thread of silver light coiled between our chests, pulsing like a heartbeat. There was no denying it now. The Omega no one wanted. The Alpha who swore to destroy her. Bound, the council moved swiftly. Chains glinted in the moonlight, silver runes etched deep into every link. The artifact I'd only heard whispers about was brought forth. The Moonstone of binding, a jagged crystal glowing with cold, pale fire. "Then you will both kneel," the papery voice hissed. "The Moonstone will bind your bond to us. You will serve the council, or you will burn." The chains snapped around my wrists, searing my skin with fire that made me cry out. Damien roared, thrashing as runes coiled around his arms, anchoring him to the ground. The Moonstone pulsed, hungry, its glow reaching toward us. The crowd fell silent, watching the trap spring shut. And I realized the truth. This was never about punishment, never about humiliation. The council hadn't tried to destroy me, they had tried to own us. Damien's voice thundered across the clearing, his body straining against the chains. "I will not bow!" The bond roared through me, my wolf clawing, tearing, demanding freedom. Pain seared my wrists, but power surged in its place. And for the first time, Damien looked at me not with scorn, not with hate, but with fire that matched my own. "Ilara," he growled, his voice breaking, "with me." The bond surged. Together we pulled. Chains rattled. The runes screamed. The Moonstone cracked, a jagged fissure splitting its glow. The council shouted, panic cutting through their calm. Wolves howled, chaos erupting in the clearing. The blood moon flared, brighter than fire, brighter than death, and in its crimson light, the cracks spread wider. The chains shattered, and the Omega they thought broken stood at the Alpha's side, bound not by the council's will, but by fate itself. The chains lay in ruins at our feet, their silver runes smoking as though they had burned themselves hollow. The Moonstone flickered on the dais, its once steady glow sputtering, fractured down the center like a heart split in two. For a moment, there was silence, a stunned, breathless silence. Then the council erupted. "This cannot be," one snarled, ripping off his wolf mask, his face pale with fury. "The spell was absolute," another shouted, hands trembling as he clutched a ledger of oaths. But the one with the papery voice stayed still. He rose, slow, deliberate, his mask gleaming in the blood moon's crimson light. "You were never meant to break the chains," he said, voice smooth as wrought. "You were meant to wear them." His words cut colder than the night air. My stomach twisted, the meaning striking deeper than any claw. This wasn't about humiliation. It wasn't about punishment. It was about control. The moonstone pulsed again, brighter now, desperate like a dying heart gasping its last. Its glow lashed out in wild tendrils of light, searing across the ground, reaching for me. I stumbled back, my wolf howling inside, claws scraping at my ribs. Damien yanked me against him, his arm a steel band around my waist. His voice thundered, sharp and furious. "What have you done?" The councilman's mask tilted, and though I couldn't see his eyes, I felt his smile. "We bound you long before the girl stepped foot in your pack. The bond you call destiny? It was ours to forge, hers to chain, yours to leash." My heart pounded, blood rushing in my ears. My wolf snarled, furious, ready to rip through the lies. "No," I whispered, though fear shook my voice. "The moon goddess chose—" "The moon goddess chooses nothing," the councilman cut in, his voice rising over the pack's restless growls. "We are the ones who decide which alpha rises, which omega falls. We wove your fates in blood because you are both valuable. And together," his voice dipped into a hiss, "together, you are unstoppable. Harnessed, you would have been our weapon." The pack erupted in growls and shouts. Some looked horrified. Others bowed lower, fear etched in their every movement. Damien's grip tightened on me. His claws half sprouted, his wolf prowling so close I could feel the heat of it radiating off his skin. "You thought you could leash me? Leash her? We are no one's weapon." The moonstone's cracks spread wider, its pale glow flickering with frantic pulses. I felt it tugging at my chest, clawing at the bond like a parasite. My skin prickled with heat and cold all at once. "They're trying to steal it," I gasped, my hands clutching Damien's shirt. "The bond, they're trying to siphon it into the moonstone." He looked down at me, silver eyes blazing, and in them I saw no mockery, no hate, only fury, only fire. "Then we'll burn them with it," he said. The councilman raised the moonstone high, chanting words that slithered like snakes across the clearing. The crystal blazed, its fractured light splitting into 100 threads that shot toward me and Damien. I screamed as the bond flared, white-hot pain ripping through me. Damien roared, his body trembling with the effort to resist as the threads wrapped around us, yanking, pulling, trying to drag the bond out of our very bones. My wolf clawed, wild and unbound now, her howl splitting my skull. "Fight," she demanded. "Fight for him! Fight for us!" I dug deep, into places I hadn't dared touch since the council's spell caged me. Power surged, raw and untamed. My palms burned as silver fire licked across my skin, answering my wolf's call. Damien turned, his forehead pressing against mine, his breath hot and ragged. "Together," he growled. I nodded, even as tears burned my eyes. Together, we let go, not of each other, but of the fear, the shame, the chains. The bond roared free, ripping through the council's threads like lightning tearing the sky. Silver fire exploded between us, wrapping us in a shield that turned their parasitic magic back on itself. The moonstone shrieked. Its glow twisted, collapsing inward as the cracks raced across its surface. The councilman screamed, his mask splitting down the middle as shards of light sliced his robes, his skin. Then, with a sound like the sky shattering, the moonstone exploded. Shards of glowing crystal rained across the clearing, embedding in the dirt, the trees, the council themselves. Wolves scattered, howls echoing into the night. When the dust cleared, the dais was empty but for broken chains and the mask of the papery-voiced councilman lying in the dirt. The council was gone. The clearing was silent, every wolf's eyes fixed on us. Damien still held me, his chest rising and falling like a storm breaking. My own body trembled, the silver fire fading from my skin but not from my veins. The bond pulsed steady and strong, no longer caged, no longer hidden. I looked up at him. His silver eyes were locked on me, not with scorn, not with hate, but with something terrifying in its own right. Need. "You were never my curse," he said, his voice low, raw. "You were my weapon, my salvation, my mate." My breath hitched. The pack shifted uneasily, waiting for his command, for his choice. I swallowed hard, my voice steady despite the quake in my bones. "Then stop fighting me. Stop fighting us." His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer until his forehead rested against mine again. For a heartbeat, I thought he might retreat, as he always had. But under the blood-red glow of the shattered moonlight, he whispered the words that changed everything. "You are mine, Elara, and I am yours. Not by their chains, not by their decree, but by fate." And with that, the Alpha who had sworn to destroy me chose me instead. The clearing still reeked of smoke and shattered magic. Shards of the Moonstone pulsed faintly where they'd embedded in the dirt, glowing like dying embers. The council was gone, their power broken, their chains lying twisted and useless at our feet. But all eyes were still on us. Dozens of wolves ringed the circle, their fur bristling, their chests heaving. Some looked awestruck, others afraid. More than a few looked furious, torn between loyalty to the council's law and the truth glowing hot and undeniable in the bond sparking between Damien and me. I stood trembling, Damien's arms still braced firmly around my waist, his body a shield and a weapon all at once. My wolf pressed against my skin, restless, desperate. The bond pulsed steady and strong, no longer caged, no longer hidden. The crowd waited. For him, for me, for the end. Damien stepped forward, pulling me with him, his silver eyes sweeping across the pack. His voice rolled out like thunder, carrying through the clearing. "They told you she was nothing," he growled. "A punishment, a disgrace, a curse on our pack." He yanked me closer, pressing me against his chest. His claws dug lightly into my hip, enough to claim, enough to warn. They lied. The word rang like a blade striking steel. "She is not their pawn. She is not their weapon. She is mine." The air crackled with the force of his declaration. My knees nearly buckled, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the bond answering his words, searing down my spine. My wolf howled inside, exultant, wild. Gasps rippled through the pack. Some wolves dropped to their knees immediately, instinct bowing to the alpha's truth. Others growled low, defiant, uncertain. One warrior stepped forward, his eyes flashing yellow. "She's an Omega." "Weak. You shame us." Damien moved before the sentence finished. In a blur, he lunged, his claws flashing, and slammed the wolf into the dirt. The crack of bone echoed. Damien's growl was feral, his silver eyes blazing. "Say it again," he snarled, his voice thick with wolf. "Say she is weak." The warrior whimpered, blood on his lips, and dropped his gaze. Submission. Damien released him with a final shove, turning back to the pack. His chest heaved, his voice rising. "She is Luna. My Luna, by blood, by bond, by the moon goddess herself." The bond surged, no longer content to lie beneath my skin. Silver light bloomed between us, weaving threads that wrapped around our bodies, binding us in the sight of every wolf present. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was wild and savage, a declaration carved into the very marrow of the night. The crowd gasped again, some in awe, others in fear. The truth could not be denied. The moon had chosen. Fate had bound. And Damien was no longer resisting. He turned to me then, his hand sliding from my waist to the back of my neck, pulling me into him. His voice dropped, rough and raw, meant for me alone. "I tried to destroy you," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. "Tried to break you, bury you, forget you." My chest ached, tears threatening. "You did." His grip tightened, pulling me closer still until his forehead pressed to mine, our bond humming between us like fire and steel. "But you didn't break," he rasped. "And the truth is, Alara, the only one destroyed was me." My breath caught, the words slicing through me, sharper than all his scorn put together. Then he kissed me. It wasn't tender. It wasn't sweet. It was desperate, savage, acclaiming under the crimson glow of the blood moon. His lips crushed mine, demanding, fierce, burning with everything he had denied for too long. The bond roared, silver fire blazing under my skin, flooding my veins. My wolf howled, her cry echoing across the clearing, answered by a chorus of howls from the pack. The ground trembled beneath us as the bond sealed, final and unbreakable. I clung to him, tasting blood and fire, my tears mixing with the heat of his mouth. When he pulled back, his silver eyes glowed brighter than the moon above, fixed on me as though nothing else existed. "You are mine," he declared again, voice carrying across the clearing. And then, softer, just for me, "And I am yours." The pack broke. Some wolves bowed, dropping to their knees, heads pressed to the dirt in submission. Others shifted, fur bristling, their howls echoing in reluctant acknowledgement of the new Luna. No one dared challenge again, because it was done. The Omega they scorned was no longer invisible, no longer their punishment. I was Luna. The drums resumed, slow and thunderous, beating like a second heart beneath the blood moon. Wolves howled in unison, their voices raw and primal. The ceremony had ended, but its meaning would echo long after. Damien still held me, his hand firm on the back of my neck, his lips brushing my temple. The Alpha's scorn was gone. What replaced it was fiercer, hungrier. And as the bond pulsed steady between us, undeniable, unbreakable, I realized the truth. I had never been the curse. I had always been the fire.